Sugar Coated. I'm your host, Adrienne Garland, the CEO and founder of She Leads Media. For far too long, women have been conditioned to sugarcoat their words, their actions, and the way they show up in the world, and to conform to certain cultural norms and ideals. This is inherently designed to keep those who are outside of the norm from gaining power, prestige, wealth, and influence, preventing more women from being recognized and respected as the powerful leaders that we truly are. Join me each week as we dive into raw conversations with remarkable, uncompromising, and inspirational women that will encourage you to strip away your sugarcoating and move boldly in the direction of your magnificent dreams. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Sugar Coated. I'm your host, Adrienne Garland, and I have a very special guest today to introduce you to. His name is Evan Freed, and he is one of the only 4 male guests that we've had so far on Sugar Coated. And the reason that I wanted to introduce Evan to all of you today is because he's amazing. And we have been talking lately so much about intentional travel. Now, I just came back from an intentional travel experience with Rice University and was definitely transformed by this experience. And this is what Evan does. He puts together transformational, intentional travel experiences for all different types of people. So welcome to Sugar Coated, Evan.
Thank you for having me, Adrienne. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited for you to be here today. You and I met because we are both part of Fora Travel. And through She Leads Media, I was talking about potentially putting together some type of a travel experience for the She Leads community. You know, you responded right away and sort of jumped in. And it turns out that you live across the water from me. Mm-hmm. So we got together and just connected and clicked. And I just love everything about what you're doing and how you're helping people through travel and through some of the other things that you do. So I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of just let everybody know about, you know, who you are and what it is that you're doing in this world.
Sure. Thank you. I got into intentional travel in, I guess, not a weird way, but not a direct path, like most things in our lives, I guess. I was inspired by Anthony Bourdain, first of all, just to travel differently. I read his book, Kinship Confidential, when I was probably too younger than I should have read it. I think my uncle gave it to me when I was I want to say in 6th grade, something like that. It was probably not appropriate for a 6th grader to read. But anyway, it just changed my mind about entrepreneurship and travel. And I had the ability to live abroad in Europe for some time and just put that to use, just traveling differently, intentionally, getting ingrained into the culture, meeting people through food, stuff like that. And then my mom, this is going to sound really weird, but it all comes together. Then my mom came down with cancer when I was in 11th grade, and she got my family into spirituality as a way to heal herself and have some kind of healing journey with her cancer diagnosis. And then fast forward to COVID, I've always wanted to take my family away for a very long trip. And we all go to Costa Rica together for a month, my wife, me, and my kids. And we have this intentional, spiritual, travel experience that all kind of combined all the things I'm really passionate about and that have built up in my life. And at the end of the trip, I just noticed a big difference in my family. My kids were best friends, and they were just they just matured in some really interesting, unique way. My wife and I got really close together, and we're communicating really clearly. So I realized I want to bring this to families in whatever capacity that looks like. And so I created this experience, which is called the Family Journey, which is intentional travel that I create and guide and lead for either individuals. I work with lots of moms who are 40 plus and just wanting to get away and find space to, through culture and experience, find themselves. I work with partners also doing the same experience, and families.
Amazing. I love this so much. I also love how inspired you were by your own journey, which then sort of gave you insight into what can happen when you're in, a magical place like Costa Rica. And I believe, I don't know exactly where in Costa Rica, but one of the parts of Costa Rica is in the blue zone.
That's where I was.
Where you were there.
Yeah, I was in blue. Yeah, the Guanacaste is the blue zone of Costa Rica.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you're in a place like that where people live to, 100 years plus, right, in vibrant health, I can't imagine that there wouldn't be some type of transformational experience that happens there just because you are in, a place like that's really truly magical. Do we know how many blue zones there are in the world?
There's 7, I believe.
7? Yeah, that's sort of what I had in my head too, which makes sense. Lucky number 7.
And not to sugarcoat the whole experience either, because so we spent a month there. That's longer than most retreats that I plan. Most of my retreats are a week. But by not putting ourselves in like a hotel that's like away from everything and like straight into the heart of it, like having to figure out how to go food shopping in places that did not have American food supermarkets, which was like a big surprise to my wife and I and our kids. Being able to just, they speak a lot of English, but a lot of places don't where we were. So just being able to navigate by using Spanish. Anyway, it was just a big assault on all of our senses, and it led to a lot of friction throughout the trip, which I think was also super helpful, because without that like authentic friction, there's not change, there's not growth.
Yeah. And I love how you said that, because it's not about going to a cushy hotel and having everybody serve you. It is becoming part of, what's going on around you. And it almost does reveal your true colors, which are not necessarily a bad thing, but it does showcase like, okay, how do you deal with uncertainty? How do you deal with, communication, especially when everybody has incomplete information, right? It's almost like for entrepreneurship, it's such a good lesson, because we're always operating without complete information, and we're always trying to do something that is uncomfortable and different.
Yeah.
So with some of the different travel experiences that you have curated, can you talk a little bit? I know you do a lot of work with like families and moms. Can you talk a little bit about why someone would, want to go on something like this? Because as a mom, I know my kids are older now, but I don't know if I would have even had the headspace to think about doing something like that. So can you talk a little bit about the, sort of like the type of people that would want to do a family retreat, and what are their goals for doing that?
First, I want to speak to the fact that like going on a not intentional vacation, a vacation where you numb and sit on the beach, like that's fine. I do it with my family from time to time. What I think is important about intentional vacation is that you take it back with you. So a lot of times we go on vacation and we get this like relief, but then we come back, the relief is very short-lived and we have nothing to take back with us. So we're just like thrown back into this life, and maybe even have like travel depression, which is a thing, like post-travel depression, because you're like thrown right back in and you're experiencing all these emotions that you put on hold for a while. So what this is about people who feel maybe overwhelmed in their life, or just like they don't have time for themselves, or just want a vacation, some space, but they want also to be able to take some things that they've experienced and learned back home with them and incorporate into their life. So one thing that's really important in Costa Rica, we just saw how they just parented their kids differently. They were just a lot less, I would say, strict with them. One thing is like during dinner, they let their kids just run around. So that's like, it helped influence my wife and I to be a little less strict with our children. And then our friends started doing it with us, kind of like letting our kids kind of go around and out. So it's about taking things from culture and like really being cognizant of it, intentional about it, and then bringing that back home. And so this is for someone who just wants to have a trip that is not fully numbing. We'll have numbing in there as well, because numbing is important. You can't always be like plugged in, but to have a mix of a feeling that lets you numb and escape, and also plug in and have space to explore yourself, to communicate with your partner, to have time for unconditional love for your children, because there's nothing getting in the way of just letting yourself love them. No places to go or things to do, and being intentional in that. So yeah, that's who it's for. And then being able to then bring that back into your life.
I love that. So, Evan, I also want to just kind of give everybody a little bit of a background. You talked about how, the impact of your mom being sick and then going to Costa Rica and how that all came together into family journey. So you're an entrepreneur, right?
Hmm.
Before this entrepreneurial turn in your life, you worked in the corporate environment as well, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you, and I know that at the time, right, it's like we do what we do, but there's so much that happens within corporate that just sometimes doesn't seem to make any sense. And for women especially, I think that the corporate environment is not set up for us and our lives, but I think more and more so that it's basically not designed for humans,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your experience in corporate and why it is that you wanted to pursue this entrepreneurial journey? Because we all know that that's also not the easiest path to tread.
Yeah. I was never in like a massive corporate company like my wife, I would say. Like she works at Moody's. So I do see a lot through her lens of corporate life. And I'm also like a white male. I'm not a woman. I'm not a person of color. Like I'm not part of the BIPOC or LGBTQ community. So like there's so much that I can't like speak to my own experience. And I just know from research and reading. But with that all said, my own experiences, I did work for Peloton Fitness like early on in their life. And then as they grew to be this like bigger corporate business that caused me to want to leave. And from seeing my wife's experiences and my own experiences and all my friends in my town who work for corporate jobs, there's no space in that environment to. Corporate companies are meant they're there for a reason. Society's built it to produce income and revenue and profits that are profiting the shareholders. It's called like, fiduciary responsibility. It's your responsibility to make as much money as possible. It's like a law. So therefore, your well-being, how you're taken care of is not of the most important. Some companies obviously put it in priority over others. My wife loves her company, and I'm thankful for that. But in general, a lot of times, like this just is not freaking fair. And it's just the way society's been built, that we are built towards profit. Apple has billions of dollars in cash sitting, and they still let go, thousands of people because it didn't make sense for their economic environment. So with that all being said, for me, I'm finding it important to build into my life and to share with people that I speak with time to rest. I know you read this book based on my suggestion, who I heard from other people, but it's called Rest is Resistance. Is like a really key book for like how I'm wanting to live my life right now.
Yeah.
It's through the lens of a Black woman who sees that our entire country was built on the back of Black slave labor, which is true. And that's ingrained in our entire culture. And it's only been a few hundred years since that happened.
Yeah.
So how do we let ourselves rest as resistance? And how do we do it in means of also looking at how our own lives are adding to oppression or adding to, toxic capitalism, white patriarchy, stuff like that, without also feeling guilty. It's like this really weird edge to work on.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the resistance is, right? Like letting go of that feeling of guilt.
It's also the resistance to resisting the force that makes you drive like a tool to make money and to do certain things, and to rest as a means to, most of us rest as a means to let ourselves recover so we can do more. But really rest should just be rest as itself. Just like us sitting in our own pain and trauma, it should just be sitting in that as itself, not for something else. We're always trying to get to something else. So.
Yeah, no, I love that point. And I think it is ingrained in all of us. We're socialized from such a early age, and even through our education, unless you are able to, be in some type of a learning environment where you're allowed to kind of pursue your own creative desires. But most of us, right, went through public or private school systems where we were sort of taught to do things for productivity's sake.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like the end game is to like at least when I went to school back in the Stone Ages, it's to get a job and to work at that job for however long. And whether you were happy or not, it didn't really matter because, you just needed sort of the money to be stable. I think things are radically different now in a lot of ways, and also at the same time, the same, right? I love that book so much, and I highly recommend that people not only read it, but I listened to it on Audible, and the author's voice is very poetic. I believe that she is a poet in addition to creating this type of movement, and that like the cadence of her voice is so beautiful and so soothing. So I think that kind of adds to the experience of it all. And it's really funny because when I was in college, I used to nap because I think, mentally tired more than anything else. And just recently, when I went to Bogota, Colombia with Rice University, I got there 2 days in advance. And Bogota is at a very high elevation. It's 1,000 kilometers higher than Boulder, Colorado. And so the altitude can affect you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I am someone like nothing affects me. Like I can push through anything. So I arrived and I was like, oh, I'm totally fine. And so I went to this beautiful mountain called Monserrate. And at the top of it, there is a church, and there's sort of the Stations of the Cross and all of that. And you can see the whole entire city of Bogota from up there. And when I took a funicular up, you can walk. And I decided that I would do one way up and I would walk down because walking down would be easy. Well, let me tell you that walking down however many thousands and thousands of steps was not easy, right? And at the bottom of it, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to like walk to, the car to get back to the hotel. And when I got back to the hotel after this, like, first of all, I had such a beautiful experience in the church. But when I got back to the hotel, I conked out and slept for 4 hours straight.
Okay.
And then the next day, I slept for 12 hours. And when I woke up, I was like still tired. And yes, it was the altitude, but I also think that because traveling like that really gets me outside of my everyday environment, I realized like how emotionally exhausted I was from all the things that I do.
Yes, that's that's so interesting because this summer I led. Actually, I also want to say the author is Trisha Hersey of Rest Resistance, and she is a poet. So I'm going to listen to it on tape. Thank you. But back to I was leading a retreat in Spain, and I was with a couple that were just so burnt out from their day to day. He owns a business, and this mother who's 42, 43, she just went and got her yoga teacher certification and is teaching yoga. They were so burnt out. And then we were there, they didn't want to do anything. And I was like, we're on a retreat. Like, I get it. You don't want to do things. We're going to go slow, but this is not this is not vacation. Like, you're not just going to sit and do nothing, go home, back to what's causing you exhaustion. So it required me to like mentally push them to do things that they didn't want to do, knowing that would be the thing that helped them when they got home to make the transitions that they needed to.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, it's that release of, I could finally just let go of all the things I'm holding on this platter in front of me, and now I don't have to do anything. And we need that release in our life. Like, that's important, but it's important to build that into every day, so we don't just do it once in a while and just burn out.
Yeah. Yeah, it was with my like sleep experience in Bogota. I mean, I definitely was blaming it on the altitude, although I know that it wasn't just that. But
There's some of that.
It felt so good to just, I didn't have nothing was mine except the clothes in the hotel room, right? Like I didn't have to worry about the laundry or the dog or the phone or anybody like even talking to me, which was so amazing. But I do hear you that's escape, right?
Yeah.
And I do think we need a little bit of the escape because we need to kind of, shut it down, but we can't escape for too long because we do have something to go back to. So, do you have any recommendations for people, just us, the everyday woman entrepreneur who probably is like this close to burnout?
Yeah.
What can we do every day or maybe like on a weekly basis so that we are not getting to that point of like, let me sleep for, 12 hours, 16 hours?
Like being intentional about it is like the most important thing. Like, for example, I fast sometimes. And so if I'm fasting as an intention to do it for my spiritual practice or for like my health, that's one thing. But if I'm doing it because I hate myself, I think I'm fat and I'm gross, that's another thing. So like you can do the same exact thing, but how you're intentional about it is very, very different. And that's like the biggest thing. So if you take a nap, and this is what I talked to about the woman in Spain with us, if you take a nap for yourself, if you're doing it because you need to escape, okay, like I said, that's okay. But if you can do it intentionally in a place of like giving yourself rest and loving yourself and like really setting up this like almost ceremony around it, it has a different intentionality and you wake up very different state than doing it from out of like just I'm burnt out and numb and I can't deal with the world anymore.
My God,
and both those things might happen.
Good.
Yeah. So it's like having intentionality about it. And again, I'm white male patriarch. Like I'm on the top of like what everyone says the food chain is in this life. And so I've been gifted so much and I'm trying to see the life from other perspectives because I want to, and I want to be anti-white male toxic patriarchy. Like, and so mothers are asked to do so much. And there's big things about like looking at our entire, life, our entire schedule each day and seeing if there's a part of it that's causing us to have like this massive hiccup in our life. So like, going back to Spain again, because it's just a really good, she's a mother who's overwhelmed. Her nighttime routine was causing her next day to be like really shitty, like staying up, binging TV way later than she should, causing her to be tired in the morning. And then it just starts a cycle again. So if you can find a place in your life where making some small changes would have outsized impact, that could be helpful. Sometimes it takes someone on the outside looking at your life and helping you do that. So if you can't do that and don't know where it is, then just trying to like be intentional about the times that you do take breaks.
I love that. Now, Evan, you also, in addition to the family journey and actually going to different places, intentional travel for rest, recovery, you also help people right here, right? Mm-hmm. Right here in Long Island, in New York. You also help people kind of find that within themselves. So can you talk a little bit about that aspect of what you're doing as well? Almost like your, I don't know if I want to necessarily call it coaching, but I
call it parent coaching.
Yeah. Trusted advisor. Yeah.
I do. I guess
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Parent coaching. For me, like during my parent coaching, I like to make a retreat like a part of it. I don't have to be there with you on the retreat, but creating some kind of idea of retreat for you is important for me. And you, whoever you are, to create that space to make the changes like quicker and more impactfully. That can look like getting out of your house and going to a hotel down the street for like 2 days and figuring out like how you retreat in your own life. Like that's something. But for me, it's doing the stuff we just talked about, working with parents, mostly mothers, because that's where it starts in family, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. It's just how the society and our structure of our families are built. But about how do you claim your life for yourself? And I say this as a man who's been meditating for 15 to 20 years and deep in my spiritual practice. And then the last year, having a couple of coaches helping me realize that I was actually doing lots of things wrong by my wife and being totally taken aback by it because I'm someone who's supposed to know this stuff. I'm supposed to get it all. And then realizing I wasn't treating her like a right person and I was doing things that are like so white, male, toxic, and patriarchal. And I was like, what the I hated myself for days, and I worked through it and got through it, far from through it, but working through it. So from that lens of how do you claim your rightness for yourself, and then how does that then affect the relationships outside of you? And so rightness is, how do you love yourself? How do you be honest with yourself? How do you have relationships that help build you up? And it's not this like, oh, like I'm badass. It's like actually like from an outside perspective, like I do my makeup and I like walk a certain way. It's like getting right with yourself inside, like really find ways to love yourself, even when you don't have makeup on, even when you think you're fat, like days like that where you hate yourself. How do you fully love yourself in all of it, which is very tough.
Mm.
And then from that place, how do you then look at your relationships from that lens and be like, well, this relationship is causing this, and can I repair it? Is this person open to us having like an open dialogue, or do I need to shut this relationship down for now? Like I shut a relationship down with my dad for like almost a year and a half, 2 years. And we're just starting to figure out what our new relationship looks like because it was not working for my rightness at all. It's really tough, deep work, but it's like really important if you want to find like love in your life, love for yourself, love for what you do, and get yourself out of these like patterns that society and put on you. But it comes down to us doing the work and us doing it together.
You know, it's so funny. I love men. I have my company, She Leads Media, because I just believe that I believe in equality more than anything else. It's not that women are better. I think we're amazing. It's not that men are better. I just think we're all human beings and we all sort of deserve, and I know that is a loaded word, but I think we all deserve to be seen for who we are. It is unfortunate that the archetype, I guess, of the white male having it all. I think it's sort of gone in a direction where we're blaming, the white male for all of our ills. And maybe that's the case. But I know so many amazing men that they were sort of just like we were conditioned societally as we were growing up, men were conditioned in the same way. So it's not that I abdicate, right? Or it's not that they should abdicate responsibility, but you can see how we sort of all got here. And I think that all of us need to take a step back and say, what are we doing? I love the word intentional, right? It's actually somebody at Rice University that I'm very close to. She operates from a place of everything that she does, every choice that she makes is intentional to not necessarily benefit her, but it's at least thought through. And I think
this comes from my teachers. Sorry, this is a really important part. You're putting out here. My teacher, David Harsha Wagner, he's like a classical tantra meditation teacher. He always talks to us about how do you keep the context of your entire life in the frame of like spirituality and being on the path towards like, he talks about freedom, enlightenment. That's just my desire. It could be, whatever it is for you, love, compassion, whatever yours is. Mine is that. And so he said, like, even like eating a piece of cake, even doing anything, like, how do you take that moment and let it be part of your path of like just enjoying it, having the desire of it, and then moving on. So it's like, how do we keep everything in the reference of whatever path that we're on? It's not going to happen all the time. Like sometimes I'll eat like fistfuls of cake and not be intentional about it. That's like just going to happen. But like, how do we then get ourselves back there quicker? And so in being intentional, I'm pretty radical, I think, on my stance about like where men stand in all of this. But I think it's the same thing in race relationships, is that it's on the oppressor to take the stance of like, I'm being anti this. Because my friend and I got into this, I don't say argument, but this conversation about, are you racist if you say things that could be disparaging or could be looked at like not nice to other races, but you're not aware of it? He said, no. He said, if you're not aware of it, then that's just being ignorant. And I said, no, it's still racist. I believe it's racist at this point in our lives. There's enough knowledge out there. There's enough know-how. There's enough books, enough literature, social media for us all to know and understand what's going on. So if you're still at this place of being ignorant, then you're racist because you're not being anti that. We're in a place where we have enough knowledge to be anti the things that have caused us to be in this place where we're unhappy, have like the highest rate of depression, the highest rate of suicide in young adults and men, like men.
Yes.
And so we're enough to be anti this society that's causing all of this and looking at our own lives. And it's hard to look at our own lives because we're very comfortable with how society has set us up in a lot of ways. But how do we become a little uncomfortable and undo all of that? And women are at this place of an oppressed group. So how do white men look at our relationship in a marriage, in a partnership, at work, and say like, how am I oppressing? Like I still oppress my wife every day, and I make sure I try not to every day.
Yeah.
And my daughters and so on. And even speaking, how I speak to them in a right tone. I noticed in the conversation in the beginning of the tone, actually, that I was speaking to you in a way that wasn't totally right. I was like, oh, wait, readjust how you're talking Because even in this, even maybe that moment right there was a little maybe talking down to. So I'm always trying to adjust that.
Listen, you can't talk down to me. No, and we're friends. So I particularly see that as more enthusiasm
Can
than
you pause this for 1
anything
second?
else. Sure. I actually love that this situation sort of happened while we were recording, because we were talking so much about relationship dynamics and everything. It's what we have to deal with as, entrepreneurs. We're always juggling a million different things. And sometimes we do, whether you're a man or a woman, we get so wrapped up in our own thing that we, forget about other people's perspectives and other people's desires.
The women still take on the majority of mental load. I'm actively working on trying to take on the mental load. Like my daughter's friends' parents' phone numbers, or trying to take on things at school. And then my wife still always in the back of her head, she always has the list going. She never lets it drop. Like my daughters are supposed to be picked up from school in 15 minutes. My au pair was going to go get them. I today made sure I changed. I put on the email that she could pick them up. But I forgot to tell my au pair that she's supposed to pick them up. And so my wife had it, because she always has it in her mind. And as men don't realize the mental load that women always have. And it's just literally ingrained in who they are.
We're like these Uber managers. So we're like, we have and I always say this to my sons, even who are in college. It's definitely less so. But some of the major things, I've got everybody's schedule in my head. I know who needs to be where, when, and why, and what's going on. It's like a constant juggling, and then all of my stuff. So that is, I think, what the mental and emotional overload is. And then when someone misses their thing or doesn't do the little part, it's like, holy crap. Because then me as the person that's managing the schedule, got to jump in. Right.
And that's like the relational part of it, is like a husband or other partner who takes on maybe a male role in the relationship take on more of that mental load. And then how does the woman, or the person who plays the female role, release some of that mental load? Because that also is really, really hard.
Yes.
And I'm actively in it every day trying to figure it out. And I'll probably be doing it until I die. Like, how do I change this dynamic a little bit and make it easier for my wife and other women that I interact with daily? But
I don't know. It's definitely a slow process, and it probably is a journey more than anything else. And it is undoing a lot of these, societal pressures that we all have and that we all feel, and also the need to be, perfect. I think that just on the woman's side of things, and I'm talking in sweeping statements from the women's point of view, but, we feel the need to do it all, right? And so it is very difficult to just relinquish that. And I say, let it break. Sometimes I do say, let it break, because once you let it break, you can see where it went wrong, and then together figure out the solution, versus the woman holding the weight of the world on her shoulders and always having to be, at the ready. Right? That's the thing that causes us so much stress, is we're always waiting for the thing to go wrong.
Yeah.
So that we can swoop in and fix it.
It's true. Yeah. And I just feel, right now I feel guilt, and I feel bad that I let that just drop, and that she had to have that mental response to it. And I'm going to internalize it, remember it, work through it, and then make sure that that doesn't happen again. And that.
See, it's all a learning lesson.
I plan my schedule right, or before the meeting, I do it that's how it has to be.
And listen, you don't podcast every single day, so this is a little bit of outside of your normal routine as well.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. I do believe for everybody, we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace. Because we're all inundated by so many different things. So, Evan, if people want to get in touch with you and they want to, talk about what putting together some type of an intentional travel experience would look like, either for themselves, their family, even, a group of women, how can they get in touch with you?
So my website, familyjourney.co, explains everything that we do. And you can reach out to me through that, or evan@familyjourney.co is my email address, and you can always reach out and I'll respond to you. for us to get on a call and explore like what that would look like for you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And do you have any actual experiences that are already, set up that people can join? Is there anything coming up?
So yeah, it's not on the website yet. It'll be up soon. The couple coaches that my wife and I hired, once we just like realized the codependence that need to be healed in our relationship, like they literally, they are incredible. They changed our relationship. I'm leading a retreat with them in Mexico in either February or March. Tomorrow we'll know exactly the date.
Great.
And so that will be up soon for, same-sex couples, husband and wife couples, whatever your make is. But it's specifically for couples and mostly parents, but there'll also be some non-parents there, I'm sure.
Great.
And then I'm putting together a retreat for Egypt in May. That will be how does like awe inspire us to live our life more fully. So like awe of pyramids and of just massive natural beauty. I'm leaning towards that also being a female-only retreat that I'm going to be leading with a co-partner who's female. And yeah, so those are the two that are established, but most of the stuff is custom built around like what you need and desire.
Amazing. And I don't know if I know this for 100% sure, but I do know that you are a travel advisor with Fora. So do you only do the booking of the travel for these travel experiences, or can people get in touch with you if they want to, talk to you about just even planning some type of an intentional travel experience that maybe doesn't have you as a component in it, if they want to just kind of like curate and put something together and get some advice from you?
Yeah, so I've stepped away from like booking vacation much, but I'm open to booking vacation if people also want some travel experience, like some intentional experiences in it. I'm booking a trip for a friend to Mexico, and then I'm working with them and my other friend who lives there. I'm about to doing some like indigenous Mayan experience while they're there as well.
Amazing.
So I know it's like can't just be like not everyone wants to get tossed into this, I don't want to say fire, but into this flame a little bit, and they want some like ease of both. That might also help their partner or their kids ease into it. So I'm open into whatever the experience looks like for your family.
Amazing. Well, Evan, thank you so much. This has been such an enlightening conversation, a wonderful conversation, and I just value your friendship so much. And I'm happy that you were able to come on Sugar Coated and talk about all the things. So thank you very much. And I hope that the audience who's listening really takes the opportunity to reach out to Evan because he is a wealth of information.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is really fun.
Awesome.
Thanks, Adrian.